Please do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. We are Extinction Rebellion, and Minister, we must interrupt your speech. This is a climate emergency. Just 4 months ago, in your first week of office, the Malinowskis government courageously declared a climate emergency, the first Australian state to do so. And like many South Australians, we welcomed this declaration as a commitment to accept the science, to act on it, to work smart and hard to reduce carbon emissions fast. Like many of the people in this room, and you yourself, a green energy person who's passionate about green energy, we are proud of South Australia's world-leading renewable shift, solar and wind and battery. Last year, 100% of South Australia's energy demand was met for renewables on 180 days, nearly half of the year. On the 11th of October last year, we were the first major power grid globally, not in Australia, not in the South, globally, to run 100% on solar. South Australia has already attracted $6 billion of investment for large-scale renewable energy and another $20 billion coming. These are great deeds towards your government's net zero commitment by 2050. But we are dismayed and angry that your government shows no signs of standing up to fossil fuel profiteers like Santos and Beach Energy and other fossil fuel advocates here today. Why? We refuse to be bystanders while you support trashing our future, the future of our children and our grandchildren, and the future of our planet.
Hear, hear.
We demand you put your foot on the fossil fuel brakes now and stop new gas and new oil in South Australia and at emergency speed. We are dismayed and angry that instead of standing up to these vested interests, Minister, your government is cozying up to them, partnering and supporting them in hosting conferences and events, providing subsidies and other supports that are a betrayal of a climate emergency declaration.
Shame.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? What are you going to tell Tia and Helen as they finish high school? You've increased gas by 422 million you've invested in the national agreement with the Commonwealth. You've nearly doubled the number of petroleum wells this year, 100, last year 54. You've increased the acreage for gas exploration and extraction in the Cooper Basin. And the Grattan Institute submission tells us that the role of gas in the Australian economy must diminish, not increase, diminish. That means go down if we are to meet our emissions targets. And you give $20,000 to 20 students every year at Adelaide Uni to do mining and petroleum degrees. And I'm sorry the gentleman in front of you thinks this is funny. It is not funny to trash the planet. It is not funny to trash the lives and the legacy for our children and our grandchildren and beyond. What sort of ancestors are we? When the Deputy Premier, Dr. Susan Close, announced the climate emergency declaration on the steps of our Parliament on the 31st of May, she was really brutally honest to us. And she said, this will be hard. But this is insane, and this conference is on the site of South Australia's first mental asylum-free sanitary. How poetic. Which side are you on? We are demanding, consistent with the science, no new oil, no new and no subsidies for carbon capture and storage, an expensive and unproven technology. In fact, what it's doing is proving that it can't meet the indications about timeliness, it can't meet cost, it can't meet the renewable targets. So we refuse to be bystanders while you support them trashing our future and the future of our planet.
The planet's too important.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank, make an opportunity to...
Excuse me, Minister, I have to interrupt you again.
I have an opportunity now to speak about Barry.
My name is Indi and Sal, I'm 29 years old, and I'm here on the government land to also express my belief that this cannot continue. We cannot continue with the future of oil and gas and coal. I want to acknowledge the Ghana elders, past and present. I want to thank Ms. Magni for her welcome to the country this morning. I have lived on the Adelaide Plains, the land of the red kangaroo, for my whole life. And I believe that we must deeply listen to First Nations people who have consistently, in the history of this continent, opposed this kind of action on their lands.
I think it's fair to say, you can't just say,
These two occupations see my attention focused on climate and weather and the seasons, but in a different way to the rest of you. I have only lived through 29 summers. But I do know, and I'm not a scientist, but I do now, even before you look at the science, that there is a new pattern emerging. And we are seeing it in the eastern states at the moment as people are underwater and as our prime agricultural land is flooded, as we see our food costs rising, and we will not be able to continue, we cannot afford to continue with events like this, and it is a shame that the government is putting this on.
Yeah, evidence is right before us.
My friends and I have often joked about how we should not have children because of climate change. And that joke masks a gnawing inside of us that many in my generation face, and I'm sure you face it in this room. And it has changed now from a question of whether it is ethical or responsible to bring children into a world that is buckling under the pressure that pollution and carbon burning generates. However, our question has shifted now to include whether we can be sure of a safe and livable future for them. In the end, however, I made a decision to have children with my heart and not my head. And in 4 days, my child will turn 1 year old. So I pause and I imagine their life at 29 years old, in the year 2050. That year seems very far away, just like 2020, and just like 2030. I've been waiting my whole life, ever since I learned about global warming in year 8 in high school, for us to commit to the action that we need to take. And I always thought it would get to a point where we would be sure that we, humanity, collectively make the right choices, that we would turn everything around.
I'll take out the thank you.
And now, when I find myself able, amid the haze of work and new parenthood and the rest of the distractions of modern life,
Look at yourself in the mirror and believe
when the kid is finally asleep and the dish in the wash and I'm ready to pass out, I imagine that world of 2050 and my kids' life. And I'm gripped with dread at what could lay ahead.
Think about
The drought, the intolerable summers, the food insecurity, the loss of species. The list goes on. I am no longer sure we will take the action and see this event take place. It is hard for that dread not to feel true.
So think about the future, think about your kids, think about what you're doing, think about who's making the money and the environmental destruction that's occurring.
People before profit, we cannot eat money.
What about the floods? What about the bushfires? How can you be part of that industry?
we need your skills for a renewable future.
Roundtable attendees are now filing out. Rebels remain mobilised against the windows. And outside, rebels are displaying their messages. Minister Koutsantonis was unable to make his speech. Rebels making the point that fossil fuels have had their day and that despite the protests and desperation of the fossil fuel industry, these ways of making profit are coming to an end. Hello there.
How you going? Just taking your name and so.
Yes, you know my name. We met before.